Hello friends. For today's video, I wanted to go through with all of you an article that I came across that is a list of rules for writers. And the structure for this is that The Guardian had asked or looked into some rules that very well-known authors have given. They're kind of staples of here's what you should not do in your writing. And then they made a compilation of all of these and then presented it for any aspiring writer to look into and to glean information and insight from. And then also just in case anybody's interested and they want to know, they can look at this list too. You don't have to be a writer. But some of the advice is, I think, so bad. Some of the, I'm like, no. And I do want to add that I think part of the problem in the delivery of this information and the delivery of a lot of advice on the internet is that it's similar to when you see a headline for a story. The headline grabs your attention. And a lot of times the headline is meant to evoke certain things in you that are very heightened, so you get angry really quickly or you get emotional really quickly to some degree. And you see that headline, you're like, what? And if you just run with that headline, the story is very different in your mind than if you actually read the story and you learn what transpired and you learn all the details and you're like, oh, okay, well, that's not as bad as I thought. Or, oh, okay, so that's like actually kind of a nice thing. It's not, and it's very sensationalized. But if you just take the little headline, it's not enough. You need the further elaboration. And I think that's the problem with some of this writing advice is very, very brief. Here, don't do this. Writing advice often does require, even though it might not seem necessary, it sometimes does require it to be elaborated on further for the exceptions to be listed, because what will happen is people will want to improve upon the skill of writing. They'll want to write a work of fiction or any kind of writing, and they want to make sure it's the best it can be. They want to grow, and so they will look to those with more knowledge. They'll look to those with more experience. They'll look for information anywhere they can, and they'll look for this advice, and they will try to incorporate it, but sometimes they will take it very literally. And as a reviewer, it's not just aspiring writers or writers that can look at this information. I think a lot of times reviewers, the more you understand of the craft of writing, the more you understand of the way in which authors try to deliver information, deliver the characters to you, have you feel grounded in the world. The more you can understand that, I think it can actually improve even, you could say, the craft of reviewing. That sounds really cheesy and kind of an inflated view of, I don't know, what I do, I guess. But regardless, I do think it can be really helpful to look at rules of writing because it can help you understand writing, whether you're a writer or not. How many times am I going to say writing and writer in this video? Anyway, so what's frustrating to me is some of this is not necessarily bad advice. It's just delivered in a way that does not seem like there's any room for disagreement or exceptions. And I do think that that's where a lot of the problems lie. A couple of them, though, I'm like, no, I just don't agree. I do want to touch on one other thing before I get into these, and I'm so sorry because some of you are like, can we get to it, please? But one other thing is that I do kind of have a love-hate relationship with advice for any art form or any skill being delivered online, because on one hand, there are a lot of really experienced people that it's so incredibly generous that they take the time to pass on their knowledge and their experience so that they can help people in the next generation of whatever that skill or profession is. And I think that's amazing. I, however, sometimes see people that will look at what those individuals have said and then they will make their own advice content, you could say, and they're benefiting off of what someone else has done out of the goodness of their heart. They'll take that and then they'll deliver it in a watered down version, and they don't actually have any experience in that given thing. And because they don't have that experience, they can't elaborate further. They can't give specifics necessarily beyond just taking what someone else said. I want to be clear that I'm not saying that I know for a fact that this information is always bad and I am the authority on this topic. I'm just saying that I wish that there was further elaboration, because I think when you make these little lists like what you see in this, in the Guardian that it actually can sometimes make things even harder because you have to kind of sift through all of the fluff to actually find the real advice in there. So all that to say, the first one I'm going to read off, I feel like perfectly captures exactly what I'm talking about. The first one says, try to leave out the part that readers tend to skip. Okay, that alone, not bad. It's vague, so I feel like when you're too vague, it's not really helpful. But then it says, think of what you skip reading a novel. Thick paragraphs of prose you can see have too many words in them. I'm like, what? No. No. Sure, the first part of, okay, don't just have words there to have words. Like, you want to be intentional. You want to have purpose. Is it doing something, right? Like, you think through, and if it's just fluff, if it's just there to be there, yeah, you might want to consider, like, maybe I should cut this. This is boring. This is interrupting the pacing. This is too much in between the dialogue between characters. Okay. But to say that, I'm like, as a reader, I don't ever see a fairly large paragraph on the page, you go, skip. There's too many words. All of books are too many words. What is that advice? That's not good advice. That's too brief. You need to be specific about the kinds of stuff that you can skip. If it's repetitive, which I feel like I'm being right now, if it's repetitive, maybe you cut it out. Or if, the character, whatever, you understand. Specifics are important. You should give those specifics when you're going to say stuff like this. Or leave it vague. At least when it was vague, you allowed for the aspiring writer to decide for themselves, like, what would a reader probably skip? What would I skip if I were reading through this manuscript? Okay, but then, like, just say, like, that's unhelpful. My dog is grumbling. I don't know if you can hear her, and I feel like she's agitated too. But, like, that's so unhelpful. Think of what you skip reading a novel. Thick paragraphs with too many words in them. No. Maybe if it's a picture book for kids, where the whole point is, like, it's mostly about the pictures and you want very little words at the bottom. Like, for a little child, maybe you don't want tons and tons and tons of text. Or if it's like a comic and you're like, oh, you might as well write a novel because there's too many words. But, like, what person opens a book and they're like, this paragraph took up a third of the page, so I'm not going to read it. Who reads like that? That was my least favorite one on the list, and I thought we'd start with it. That doesn't even take into account that there are different writing styles, and there's different writing styles between genres, one, but also in different languages and in different countries, there's different ways of writing that are viewed positively or negatively, and sometimes really long sentences or the bigger paragraphs and stuff are viewed differently. So it's unhelpful. I did not like that. The next one says, avoid detailed descriptions of characters. Okay, this just depends. It depends on the genre. It depends on the preference of the reader. Some people actually don't have the ability to visualize in their mind. And so sometimes long amounts of descriptions are unhelpful because it's like, well, I can't visualize this anyway. But then the reverse can be true too. Sometimes the more that you establish, like, that character looks this way, sometimes it's at least known to the person, even if they don't visualize it. But the opposite, some people love to visualize things as they read, and they want to be able to have those descriptions so that they can visualize. And when they have none, it can be irksome. I've seen a lot of reviews where somebody will say, I have no idea what any of the characters look like, and they'll say that as a negative. And other times, like, it just depends on the genre, because I think for a lot of fantasy romance in particular, or romance books, a lot of people want to know what the characters look like. And I think there's something to be said too of our experience with reading and how it has changed over the years. A lot of readers really like looking at fan art. A lot of readers like to draw the characters, and if they have no descriptions, then that's kind of a downside for them, because it doesn't allow them to further their experience with the story. Obviously, the story stands on its own, but a lot of people's relationship with stories doesn't just end when the book ends. It goes further on, and sometimes those descriptions are what bring things to life. I'm not saying it's bad to not have detailed descriptions of characters, and you don't need to be like, their nose is this size, their nostrils are this size, the upper lip is this size compared to the bottom, and their ear. You don't need to describe everything. I understand that. But also for some people, no, descriptions are not helpful, and then some people want at least some, but this is what I mean again, it's too vague. It's too vague to say avoid detailed descriptions, because somebody will go, oh, okay, I shouldn't have too much description. I'll just say they're like kind of tall. And someone will be like, okay, so they're tall, but like what else? And it's mixed signals, because if you have beta readers, they're going to tell you one thing, but I read this advice, and this advice is coming from professionals, so it must be more valuable than what these people are. It's just an opinion. That's just an opinion. I don't know why that's seen as a don't. Another one, okay. So I don't agree with I do agree with the first part, but then I don't agree with the second part. So it says, keep your exclamation points under control. Yes, completely agree with that. You don't want too many exclamation points. You don't want too many em dashes, too many ellipses. That it gets to be too much. It actually can be distracting for the reader, because visually it's so much is going on, and it also takes away. If you have an exclamation point, it's supposed to show a heightened sense of anger or excitement or something like that. But if you use it all the time, then it just feels like everybody's shouting all the time. It just takes it away. It's not as impactful. Okay, so I agree with that. But then it says, I'm like, what? It says you are allowed no more than 2 or 3 per 100,000 words of prose. That's so much. I don't know, for those of you that have never written a story before, if you realize how much 100,000 words is. That's a lot of words. Some novels are like 80,000 words. So in some novels, you shouldn't use more than 2 in the whole book. This next one is one that I have seen so many times. It does not surprise me that it's on this list, but I feel like the way in which they describe what this thing is not necessarily always true. So the advice is avoid prologues. I've also seen that apparently a lot of agents don't like prologues. If you send in a lot of agents will ask for a certain word count or something of that sort for you to submit. And you'll see a lot of writing advice that will say, like, don't submit a prologue. A lot of agents, if they see a prologue, they won't even look at it, which I just feel like that's silly. But anyway, so this one says avoid prologues. It says they can be annoying, especially a prologue following an introduction that comes after a foreword. But these are ordinarily found in nonfiction. A prologue in a novel is backstory, and you can drop it in anywhere you want. And I'm like, not always. Prologues aren't always delivered in that fashion. So it just feels like it's limiting what prologues can be, and also it just, like, some people like, for example, there's certain prologues that will give you a hint of what's to come, and that's certainly not backstory. And some people really like getting like a taste of what's going to come, and it kind of gives this sense of dread the whole time you're reading, because you're like, I remember in the prologue. I feel like Strange the Dreamer is an example of that. And some people really don't like the prologue, and some people love it. A different prologue that's delivered in a different style, sure, it's backstory, but there's, I think, a prelude and then a prologue. But in Way of Kings, the prologue with Zeth is such a good way to open the book. It does technically come after something else, so it's not the very opening. But it's so captivating. It is technically backstory, and it sets the scene for what connects all the characters. But then what's interesting is with each new book of Stormlight Archive, you actually see that scene from someone else's perspective, and you're kind of piecing things together, and those pieces play a role in present day and your understanding of everything going on, and I just feel like that's really cool. So to tell people, like, don't do them, they're annoying, it's like, okay, well, some people find them annoying, I get that. I just don't like these things said in absolutes. I don't like these things said with such authority. I think it'd be different if it's like, I would recommend, generally speaking, because of XYZ, that further elaboration would be helpful here. If you did they didn't even bring in agents into this or anything like that, because I could kind of understand there. I just think that is not helpful. Sometimes prologues can be delivered in a really engaging, interesting way. And that's the case with pretty much all rules of writing and in all art, any kind of art form, whether that be something you do that's literal, like I like to draw, whether that be music, whether that be makeup. I think a big thing is don't take the rules too seriously, because sometimes those rules are meant to be broken, and some of the people that are lauded as some of the best are the ones that take a chance on breaking the rules. I know a lot of people are fans of Cormac McCarthy, and Cormac McCarthy certainly does not follow a lot of rules. and his works are very respected. And so it just depends. It just depends. Sometimes knowing the rules allows you to know how to manipulate them in a way that is interesting. So I'm not saying it's wrong to kind of know what those rules are, and maybe sometimes you don't feel like you have the skill to manipulate them in a way that's interesting and new and engaging, but I don't like these absolutes, especially when it's not necessarily something that's even true from one book to the next, one genre to the next, one language to the next. The last one I'll say is it says never. So this one is as absolute as you can be. At least the last one said avoid. This one, never use a verb other than said to carry dialogue. So then they give examples. They say it's far less intrusive than grumbled, gasped, cautioned, lied. And that's another one I'll see pretty often. I agree that you shouldn't have it all the time. If you have gasped and then all those other examples every single time, if you're always trying to change said, then I understand why what I was saying before, where sometimes it's like the bells and whistles, it is intrusive to have something every single time. It becomes almost comical. However, there's another one on the list that talked about don't add adverbs to said, because then it's too much. But there are some writing styles that are satirical, or there's some that are very humorous, where the point is to be super over the top, to create you're kind of, I don't know, I almost think Monty Python is a good example. Quest for the Holy Grail, everything's super over the top and everything's so ridiculous that if you go on and on and on and on about how someone said something, that can be funny. But when you tell someone never do that, you're stifling what could be a hilarious voice, a hilarious authorial voice. And that makes me sad because there's just so many things that writers can do that when you tell them over and over again, don't do that, it can really impact what would otherwise be a really interesting decision, a really interesting story. And also sometimes you can substitute another word in for said. To say never, no, don't say never. Say most of the time. A lot of the times you want to avoid because of XYZ, but never, I don't know. But another side of this, another angle, I've brought up how sometimes it's helpful for reviewers to understand the rules of writing. A negative side is sometimes reviewers will see these rules of writing and they will punish books in their reviews and in their ratings for having these things. If a book has a prologue, they'll be like, well, it shouldn't have had a prologue. And if a book has, what I was just describing, where instead of said, or if they add adverbs to said, then they'll be like, they just used too many. And they won't actually look at, was it intentional? Was it meant to convey something? They'll just see that it broke these rules and therefore it must be less than. Therefore the writing's not as good. And I just think there's more nuance to writing and reviewing than what these rules are showing. That's it though for some rules of writing that are maybe a little bit too brief or a little too absolute in their delivery. I'm very curious to know, what are some rules of writing that you've seen that you would advise people to not take them really literally? I'm very, very curious to know. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day and I'll see you later. Bye.